Our fourth and last topic today is titled Power and Environment by Mr. Rony Karam. Mr. Karam is the CEO of KDP Real Estate Companies. He is a BS holder in civil engineering from the University of Notre Dame. Mr. Karam, holder of a diploma from Grande École from HEC Paris and a certificate in political science from Sciences Po Paris. He is the owner and CEO of the KDP Group of companies investing in real estate in Canada, the United States, and Colombia. Mr. Karam is the previous CEO of the United Contractors and Engineers and UMD in Lebanon. Mr. Karam discussant will be Mr. Albert Letayf. Mr. Letayf is the founder and CEO of Primecorp Invest. He holds a master's degree in management from HEC Paris. Mr. Letayf is a board member of the National Bank of Kuwait as well as RIMCO. He possesses an extensive background in the banking sector in which he was the CEO of Lebanon Française Finance and head of capital markets and private banking. Before leaving the floor for Mr. Karam, allow me to remind you of the session ground rules. So the time of the session will be 40 minutes as well. We will have 15 minutes for the author, 7 minutes for the discussant, and then we will jump into the questions from the public and from the attendees over Zoom. Mr. Karam, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. This is the last session, so I assume that I appreciate the fact that people are still here. And we're going to talk about a major problem that we're all facing today, which is almost a country in total blackout. Lebanon is running out of electricity. We have 1 or 2 hours of electricity, and we are one of the few countries in the world, if not the only country, without electricity. Meanwhile, we're seeing at the same time people installing solar panels all over the place, and it's popping up everywhere. And we're going to be reaching, by the end of this year, around 450 megawatts of solar on rooftops. So this is a very encouraging, and we're seeing how fast this goes. And this is extremely important in a new energy model. This is not... Okay. So, the energy and the new... Okay. So we're moving into an energy transformation which is essential. And this is something that we would like to talk about today regarding an energy transition, investments, major investments that would go into transforming our energy landscape. From this model, which is the classical model of producing energy with very large plants, and this is what the government is still pursuing and fighting over, moving it, through the transmission and the distribution grid to us as consumers, to us in the households and this university or elsewhere. And we need to move to this new energy model that is reflected in what we're seeing today on rooftops. All of us today will become producers of energy at the same time as consumers. This is why they would call us prosumers. And this model is going to change radically how we pursue energy, how we produce energy, how we consume energy. And this will integrate storage. This will integrate, obviously, renewable energy, solar, wind, biomass, geothermal, etc. So a more variety of energy that would allow also a distribution of energy. We can produce energy anywhere in Lebanon today, in villages, on the top of this university, in schools, in hospitals, and on top of our buildings. So it's extremely important to understand that there's a major shift in the world in the past 10 years in the energy model, and this is why we're seeing the Green Deal in the US, we're seeing the European Green Deal in Europe, and we believe that Lebanon, to get out of this ordeal, out of this calamity that we're in today, we need to move into a Lebanon Green Deal, where we will invest substantially in these energy forms. So So basically, what does this entail? This entails, for example, as I mentioned, this is a game changer. This is just very slow to react. It entails, for example, USG. We understand that USG has a major problem today all over its campuses because it has a $2.5 million diesel fuel bill, and it's unsustainable for the university. And this money is going away from educational purposes. So USG, for example, to reduce this energy bill from generators, would need to can install solar panels on the roof, and this is what they are considering, can install batteries, and will be able to reduce substantially the use of their generators. Substantially, we've modeled different villages, for example, and different cases. USG can probably reduce its generator use from 90% today, which is almost 20 hours, 22 hours of diesel generation, to less than 10%. And this is a major shift in the cost of what a university like USG will have. $2.5 million in diesel will be reduced probably to less than $1 million. So what's really important to understand is this major shift is changing also, is coming from the cost structure. We have on one side these hybrid systems that we can develop in villages, as I mentioned, on top of our buildings. And the cost has changed substantially from the past 10 years. Why the government does not take into account the fact that the plan they had devised 10 years ago, that's still more or less around today, is completely obsolete in view of these changes and in view of the cost reduction. For example, 10 years ago, solar was at 30 cents. Today, it's at 3 cents or 4 cents. Batteries were at 30 cents or 40 cents. Today, batteries storage is at 5 cents. So we're reaching a cost where, paradoxically, it's much cheaper to produce our own energy and to store it, and to reduce the level of using the generator compared to building large gas plants that will be concentrated, that will be distributing all over the country, and that will be polluting. So the model that we looked at the numbers of the Ministry of the government's plan, February 2022 government plan, analyzed the prices, adjusted the pricing to existing costs of barrel of the gas that they want to implement. And we've seen today that it is 70% more expensive to produce from large gas plants to distribute it around the country, losing 40% on its way. This is the problem we have in Lebanon in the loss of transmission and distribution, and the unbilling, and capacity to receive our bills, and the cost of pollution. I mean, we haven't seen one single minister of energy today talking about the cost of pollution and building these plants on the coast. And this is a major issue that we need to take into account. So you're reaching the level of cost, which is 18.7 cents at 100 barrel at $120, compared to 11 cents today in producing your energy in your villages, for example. And this is local energy. This doesn't wait for us to have to go and buy the gas and disburse foreign exchange in order to be able to secure the gas. While what we're seeing from the government is a willingness to build more gas plants without having the money to be able to pay for the gas. I mean, we are borrowing today $300 million from the World Bank just to get us going into one single gas plant for a year and a half. And they're assuming today that they're going to charge people enough, people will pay enough to be able to increase the capacity and to be able to produce 24 hours electricity. The 18.7 cents is close to what the ministry is planning as a tariff for all of us to pay. And the question is, do people in Lebanon today have the means to pay 18 cents of a tariff? While if you have 11 cents as a cost, you could probably charge 12, 13 cents, and you will allow many more people to be able to sustain energy. As I mentioned, pollution is extremely important. These gas plants are located on the coast. This is where most of the Lebanese population is living, and it's creating huge environmental problems and health problems. I mean, Greenpeace study in 2020 estimated the death related to fossil fuel production is 2,700 deaths every single year from diseases, from cancers, or from asthma, or from any other diseases. A study to the Ministry of Environment in 2020 estimated the pollution of air to be around $900 million a year. A study we've done with Strategy End and AUB estimated the healthcare cost to be around $500, $600 million a year. So there's a tremendous cost in implementing, in building these gas plants on the coast, and the presence of the plants on the coast. And the speed of execution. I mean, to build a plant, you need 4 years. They say it's between 3 and 5 and 4 years. We think in Lebanon it's going to be much longer, but assume it's 4 years. While we've seen how fast we can install solar on our rooftops, and install batteries, and implementing a hybrid model, for example, for a village, could be done in a few months, in a few weeks. So the speed of execution is extremely important in a country in dire need of energy like Lebanon today. And we have to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels. This is part of the reasons why we've been bankrupted. Fossil fuels cost us in the past $6 billion every single year. If you take this over 30 years, this is many more times our GDP. So it's a huge impact. Everybody knows the deficit from EDL at more than $45 billion. So we have to be able to move to a new model that will allow us to be energy independent, that allow us to be carbon neutral. And we believe this is achievable in the next 2 decades. So this is one of the transitions that Lebanon needs to be moving in order to provide sustainable energy, local energy, reduce its fuel imports, or reach a stage where it does not, it doesn't need to import at all, and move into a model where everything is local and provide development for regions, provide local jobs, etc. So the addiction to fossil fuels is extremely important. The impact, I mean, just on a macro level today, our cost today estimated, nobody has the real numbers, buying mostly diesel fuel for our generators is more than $4 billion. Government plan is $2.6 billion based on barrel at $120. They took the assumption of a barrel at $80. So it was $1.9 billion, but with that we're increasing $700 million. And this is an important aspect also of importing energy, because we are always at the mercy of energy prices worldwide. While renewable energy, once you invest it, it's a fixed price over 30 years. And obviously, when you're moving to the energy transition, you're substantially reducing your energy bill to the estimated could be less than $1 billion. So we're, these are very important impacts on the FX of the country, of foreign exchange, on the capacity to import, and on the cost to the state and to the people, because ultimately this is what people are paying. This is an analysis of the government plan. This is how they're reaching the fact that they want to charge you 18.3 cents. $1.9 million for combustibles, $500 million operation and maintenance, and $400 million for transportation and ODL. So their estimate at $80 a barrel is $2.8 billion. This is what they need. The estimate today with $120 a barrel is $700 million more. So $3.5 billion. So what is the Lebanon Green Deal? What are we suggesting to do? Install renewables everywhere where we can and as fast as possible. And we're asking the donor community to take notice that it's much better to finance local villages or regions than to finance an inept, corrupt, and incapable of reform central government. So come in and help the different regions of the country, the different communities in the country, to build these hybrid systems that will provide a cheaper cost and a faster solution to our energy crisis. So the plan would be to ramp up substantially renewables. We have today 2 gas plants, Deir Ammar and Zahrani. We can start by making these gas plants function and being able to provide gas for these gas plants. At the same time, ramp up renewables so we can reduce the system cost as an average, and start maybe building 1 extra gas plant because it takes 4 years to be in the pipeline. But beyond that, it's much more important to start building distributed renewable on top of schools, universities. We'll show that. Then start, keep on investing into gas plants where we don't have the money to buy the gas. And limit the number of gas plants to 2. Not 7, not 6, not 5. We need to clean our coast. We need to reduce our pollution levels. And we only can do that by substantially ramping up our renewable production. How do we do that? And where do we do that? Basically, on top of our schools, USG, we studied 2,800 schools in Lebanon, on top of in many regions in the country. With CNRS, we've mapped most of the country where we can today reach around 20,000 megawatt of renewable, almost 6,000 of solar on public land, and 1,000 of wind on public land. And this is enough for us to reach 50% renewables just by building on public land. And this is mapping for regions, for villages, for and utility scale, very large projects that we will be able to show you. This is, for example, a project we're working with 25 municipalities. This is in Ras Al-Balbak, Hedmil, Asail, and all the municipalities around. And we're preparing a proposal for the financing community to be able to install a large-scale solar plant with batteries that will provide electricity, sustainable electricity, for 220,000 people in that region. Same thing now we're starting in the West Bekaa with multiple villages. This is an example of a hybrid project in Jabouli. This is done by the private sector. And what's interesting in Jabouli is that before that project, people wouldn't pay their electricity bill to ODL. Now with the project, they're getting 24 hours electricity. It's being billed around 10 cents, so much cheaper than what you're billing for the generator. They're getting 22 to 24 hours electricity, and everybody is paying for their bill because it's done through prepaid cards. So the distributed model also allows you both to reduce the losses that you have in your system, the transmission, the transport losses of energy, and at the same time, the uncollected bill. The generator is able to collect the bill. Jabouli is able to collect the bill. So having a local model has much better chance of securing 100% collection bill like we have in Jabouli, and reducing almost to zero the network losses, the technical losses that they always talk about. We designed, for example, in Bej Hamoud, working with Avitam, and we also saw where they could install renewables. Schools, hospitals, the Karantina dam, for example, could be used fully or partially to install a solar plant. If you install solar plants on the Karantina dam, you can provide for the 200,000 inhabitants of Bej Hamoud, half of their electricity needs during the day. So this is substantial. We worked with the municipality of Gbeiri, for example, trying also to do the same thing. So this is where we can start implementing solar rooftops or projects where you can install on dumps or in different lands very quickly. Villages are very important because villages are remote, they have the land. You're losing transportation with them, and they need development. They're in bad need of electricity. We've met with people from a village in Ras Al-Albak, in Al Ain, 25 young people who are we were looking for our help to get them a study and money for the water well. They don't have water in the village, they're farmers. And so they were asking how much it would cost for us to get money to provide solar for our water wells. As I mentioned, we studied 2,800 schools, including USG and universities. Potential is 470, almost 480 megawatts if you put solar on all the rooftops of schools in Lebanon. This is Beirut, just gives you an idea about schools in Beirut. We separated between public schools and private schools. This is for financing, but this shows you, for example, the details of the studies that we do. Hospitals, same thing, 50 megawatts. Government buildings, 143 megawatts. For example, Beirut Airport has 230,000 square meters of unused roof. They use part of it, for example, for ACs, but you could have solar on all the rooftop of the Beirut Airport. That could provide for the airport, or if you have excess electricity, store it or provide to the neighborhood. Water wells is extremely important. We did a study that we presented to the World Bank. A lot of the utility water companies don't have the money anymore to buy diesel fuel to pump the water. So we did a study for the 950 water wells in Lebanon, and we estimated that we needed 180 megawatts to install solar so you can provide it. So the studies we do are very detailed. We use software. We eliminate all the non-agricultural land. We eliminate wooded land. We have criteria for elevation, orientation, and the numbers that we have that we provide are quite precise. Finally, we also designed and studied utility scale solar plants. So this is, for example, in Ras Al-Albak. This could be one of the biggest solar plants in the world. And this plant is extremely important. The criteria we look now for are obviously the technical criteria to have a solar plant, but we also look for the grid. So this land has two high tension power lines going through it that will provide electricity for the whole country. And we also look for public land. And you can see here that 50% of this land is public. All the green area that you see on this map is public land. And this is something that could start right away. The cables that you have on these transmission lines would allow you to start with probably 300 to 400 or 300 to 500 megawatts of solar immediately with the existing grid, while you upgrade the grid to allow you to build more solar as a second phase. So these are projects that could be executed right away. Same thing so this is a land in Ras Al-Albak, Jared. So we don't use agricultural land, and it gives you an idea, what type of land. Same thing in West Bekaa. I'm almost done. Same criteria, land suitable for solar or wind, transmission line, public land, public land.
Thank you so much, Mr. Karam. Great presentation. I will leave the floor now for Mr. Letayf to discuss your proposition and see if any of the public has any question.
Okay, thanks, Rony. What I would like to stress on, in fact, everybody in the world, I believe, is convinced of massive investment in renewable energy. So it's not really a topic where we should really convince people, except, of course, the Minister of Energy in Lebanon, which still doesn't understand that the world has changed. Anyway, so what I would like to stress on this presentation is the fact that Lebanon, the very important criteria for developing renewable energy in Lebanon. First, we have nothing. This sector has been at least 20 years that we didn't invest $1 in this sector. So we have the opportunity to leapfrog and to rebuild and to go massively and very rapidly in a new modern world. To go immediately, achieve a goal of 50% renewable energy in a very short span of time because we don't have legacy issues, big power plants, etc. The second thing that I'd like to stress on is the fact that we have to stop in Lebanon the reliance on fossil fuels for two reasons mainly. First, this is where the big corruption lies in Lebanon and the big mismanagement, let's say, of procurement. Okay. Second, Lebanon finance are very tight, especially now. So we cannot afford any rise, any volatility in the prices of gas or oil. Okay, as Rony said, when you invest in renewable energy, you have your cost planned for at least 30 years. So that's very important in a country that's really on the edge like Lebanon. Even with any IMF plan, if prices of gas spike and goes up, then all the plan wouldn't have served to anything, and we would be bankrupt again. The other factor that's very important in Lebanon is the speed of execution of installing renewable energy plants. We need energy immediately. We need energy during the day. We don't need 24 hours energy now. We need a few hours. We need 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. So starting with renewable energy, local energy that would distribute to villages, to communities, would fill already a gap. So you don't need to do like the government plans, a 24-hour plan. You should start filling the gaps. You should start putting energy in the day, giving energy during the day. Even if you don't put batteries, it would be half the cost of the 11 cents. It would be around 6 cents or 7 cents. So this the situation we are in incentivizes us more to invest in renewable energy. My last point is the fact that the private sector in Lebanon is very dynamic and is ready to invest and is not waiting for the government. So already people are investing in renewable energy, in batteries, solar panels, etc. What we need for the government is to encourage that. So we need first to vote regulation, because still now we don't have the regulation that would allow private or corporates to install their own energy, to produce their own energy. So the law 462 is still not voted, I believe. The second thing is we need to try to help financing these investments, because all these investment banks, as you know, are dead, all of them. So we really need to find ways of financing or helping these people, individuals or corporate, to finance their investment in capex. Okay, anything? Okay, I think I'm done for these specific reasons to leapfrog into renewable energies in Lebanon.
Would you like to comment on this, or we can take questions?
Sure. Just regarding financing, I think what's important to keep in mind is that the pool of financing for renewable energies is much larger today in the world and in the region than financing fossil fuels. You need more money initially, so maybe you need twice as much money initially, but it's quickly amortized by saving on the import of fuel. So the amount of financing, both for the public sector and the private sector, is much more important today. And if Lebanon does the proper reforms, you will get, the money to be able to achieve this. The second thing is, people will finance maybe your gas plant. So maybe you will have Siemens who will come and finance your gas plant, or maybe international institutions will do an exception for Lebanon to finance a gas plant. But nobody is going to finance your operation and maintenance, and nobody is going to finance purchasing the fuel. The cost of a gas plant is only 12–13% of the total cost of producing energy with gas over the lifetime of the plant. So even if they give us the plants for free, it's not the problem. It's the problem, how do we secure buying the gas for us to run these plants? And we're seeing it today. I mean, the government doesn't even have money to do the maintenance of the plants. The government doesn't have even the money to buy a minimum gas, and they're getting a loan from the World Bank, both to buy Egyptian gas and to buy electricity from Jordan, which is extremely inefficient. So it's extremely important to keep in mind that the energy bill of the country is unsustainable. And finally, we're talking about the IMF plan. The IMF plan is coming to tell us, guys, you guys are poorer now, much poorer than you were before. You used to import $18–20 billion every single year. Today, you can only sustain to import $7–8 billion maximum. Our energy bill, at the minimum today, including transportation, is probably $4 billion, $5 billion. So we will be left only with $2–3 billion to import everything else: food, medication, machinery, etc. So this is unsustainable. If we want to rebuild a durable, sustainable economy, we need a durable, sustainable energy system, and we need to cut our energy bill at least by 2. And we can only do it through massively injecting renewables into the system. Otherwise, we're going to go from crisis to crisis to crisis and never get out of it. We've been doing it for the past 30 years. It's time now to change the paradigm. There's a major paradigm shift in introducing, we're not talking about only renewables, we're talking about changing the whole model, looking holistically, introducing electrical cars very quickly, battery storage. All the technology that we need for the grid is extremely important to implement today to start building on the right foot.
Thank you. Any other questions from? Yes, this is an interesting topic.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Karam. 2 related questions. So there's a narrative that goes around that one of the obstacles to any kind of improvement in the energy supply are the generator operators, or the so-called generator mafia. There have been reports that, I'm not sure if they have been verified, that generator operators have threatened customers who put up solar panels to cut them off, to try to suppress this trend. So that's one. How, in your perception, is this resistance from the generator operators something real? Is this something one really has to contend with? And if so, how to solve this? Second, related question. Now, the energy importation, as well as building the power stations, the new power stations, obviously involves interests of powerful people in the country and in politics. Your proposals to build these decentralized power stations, which would seem to cut these guys out, I would expect that there will be resistance. So the question is, what can be done to overcome this resistance? Is perhaps a way that, just playing maybe a bit of devil's advocate here, do we need to allow a little bit of corruption within your model to actually have a chance to implement it?
Thank you.
Well, I think your question is in general, mentioning vested interest, whether it's from the generators or from fuel importers. I'll start with the fuel. I think the major mafia is the fuel. and less a generator. But I mean, why is it? Because the fuel is feeding our political class. I mean, one politician from the north said, we disagree on everything except on the fuel. So yes, there are vested interests in the fuel. Now, the country not having any electricity, at least is importing, last year I was told it's $2.8 billion in diesel, and obviously this is the vested interest into that. I think they know that the world is changing, and it's probably better in their interest to come and invest in renewables. Every single gas company in the world, Total, Shell, BP, the Norwegian state company, I forgot, or they changed their name. Total now is not Total anymore, it's Total Energy, because they're investing substantially in renewable energy. So I think, if they're, they can fight it, but they also can join it. Same thing for the generators. I mean, we are asked a lot by municipalities, what do we do with the generators? Can we have them operate alone and we install solar and batteries, and we kind of agree and we say technically it doesn't work. You need one single brain to manage the whole system. And there's a conflict of interest because you want to minimize the use of the generator while he wants to maximize the use of the generator. But it doesn't mean that you're going to fight him. Maybe you can allow him to come in the company. You need his grid. You need his collection capacity. He collects 100%. Much better than EDL. So, buy them out, employ them, let them take a stake in the system, and let them understand this is the future. And the people who have leverage on them are the municipalities. The local municipalities are the ones who can say, we can stop you. We will buy our own generators and we will not allow you to operate your generators. So it's much better to tell them, join us. We're not here to fight you. A lot of generators are closing shop. They're losing money now. They're not able to provide electricity. And the municipalities tell us this is the time for us to come and discuss with the generators and let them integrate the system.
Thank you, Rony. We'll take a question from Mrs. Zaatari and a question from Mrs. Marie Grebstad.
Thank you for this presentation. Actually, my question falls in line with the previous question, and I wanted to ask about the vested interest in the political mafia and the generators mafia in importing fuel and fossil fuels. So have you actually done any solid proposal and discussed that with any central or local government? Particularly, I'm talking about urban context, because we know where most of the population lives and the scarcity of land in that area. And if there's no proposal, then we know that we can't use public land or public schools. Have you actually thought of any solution at the private individual level in the city where we know there's apartment buildings, so you can't actually apply what's being applied in the villages, solar panel on roofs, because there would be, I don't know if it covers all the need. But have you actually thought of a solution, let's say in Beirut, where there's apartment buildings, and thought of something that would sustain and...
Thank you, Abir.
Yeah.
Obviously in the city, the problem is space. And the only space you can have in general, except using the Quarantina damp or the Costa Brava damp, is on the rooftops. So the private initiatives today where people are installing, as I mentioned, we're going to reach 450 megawatts by the end of this year, is people installing on the rooftop. What we concentrated on are large roofs, like the schools, like the universities. The schools are extremely interesting because they have excess production of energy, because they're closed in the weekend, they're closed during the summer or during vacations, and they have excess energy. And we've worked with a school where we audited, for example, a solar system, and we made recommendations for their generator, for their batteries. So we concentrated on the large rooftops that we mentioned. Now, the large rooftops that I mentioned, schools and universities and hospitals and public buildings and water wells, this takes us almost to 1,000 megawatts. So it's already a lot. If you add on top of it the 200, 300, 400 megawatts that people are going to be installing on the rooftop, that's almost 1,500 megawatts. We need 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts to reach 50%. So we still need these large power plants in the Bekaa that I mentioned, the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 megawatts in different parts of the region. The hybrid models that we're talking, there are 1,200 villages in Lebanon. If each village or each group of villages has his own hybrid system that provides them 24-hour electricity at 11 cents, this is going to reduce substantially your need for central electrical production. So I think you have to work on the different levels, and you have to work with local authorities because they get it, because otherwise dealing with the government is, as we all know, electricity is the most ominous sign of a failed state. A country that doesn't have electricity is a failed country. And we mentioned, for example, having these gas, in the previous sessions, the gas tanks next to Daura, representing hazard. We mentioned about urban planning. Everything comes and integrates into the solving the electricity problem. This is why we believe we need to look at it in a holistic way, not in a separate way. I just want 24-hour electricity. I'm going to build 2 gas plants, and the problem will be solved. This is not going to be the case. I need also to solve my transportation problem and to start integrating electrical cars. I need to solve my demand. I need to control my demand. We cannot assume that the demand will keep on increasing. Now, obviously, demand has gone down substantially. Lebanese people are in a frugality mode. Whoever had 20 amps now is going down to 10 amps. Or 10 amps is using only 5 amps because we cannot afford electricity anymore. It's good to be careful with your electricity consumption. We have to introduce efficiency. We have to introduce isolation for our buildings. Everything will need to be geared towards reducing our energy consumption and reducing the waste that we've been living on for so long, built on debt. Everything was built on debt, and we know the electricity sector is one of the main culprits from our current bankruptcy today.
Thank you, Mr. Karam. Thank you, Mr. Letayf, for this interesting session. I would like to thank all of our discussants and authors for this very interesting panel, and I will leave the floor for Mr. Grebstad to conclude.
Thank you so much for this part of the panel and also for the previous ones. On this last one, I just wanted to make a comment, and I'd be very happy to continue discussions with both of you and anyone else who is interested later. But this is really an area where we at the embassy are hoping to develop our thinking, especially around what we as donors and Norway could do to advance this work. I wanted to just summarize or reflect around this panel, focusing on two issues, 2 words that, to me, is really at the core of this, or really important for this discussion on good governance. One is trust, and the obvious lack of trust between people and in the system. And I think this is something that's also in the first panel of today was very obvious. The other issue, and I'm maybe jumping a bit ahead because tomorrow there will be a session looking a bit more into this issue when Lydia Aswad will be speaking, but I think tax and taxation also really is very central to this topic. And I'm going to be careful to make too strong of sort of comparison and to focus too much on sort of Norway in this, but Norway is a country with high levels of public trust in public institutions. We also pay a lot of taxes, and I think the link between the two, when you pay taxes and you get something in return, you reinforce that trust. And if there is something that Lebanon really needs, as much as this is a difficult topic in today's economic climate, it is really to generate domestic resources. And I think this also links to the energy sector. I mean, collecting taxes and providing services is something that we have to work towards. So I think part of the solution, I wanted to come back to the point made by Carol earlier in terms of strengthening oversight institutions. I think this, to me, really is a very important aspect when talking about optimizing good governance in Lebanon and strengthening the oversight institutions will be key. So trust and tax are my 2 words, and thank you so much to all the speakers today.
Thank you everyone for this long day.